Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic, where as usual we're going to take a look at the Diabolical Sudoku, which appeared in the Daily Telegraph on Friday. Now, as usual, this was a beast of a puzzle, and hands up, I found it harder than usual actually, and finding a logical way into it was really, really difficult. So what I've got on the screen there is how far I got using the pencil marks we recommend. So what do we recommend? Well, we recommend that when you're looking at 3x3 boxes, if you can only find two places where a number can go, you make these little pencil marks, and you can build up some logic this way. And this is where I got to, and I ground to the most almighty halt. Now, in competition situations, what I'd obviously do here is guess. I'll probably look at this 3-7 combination and guess. Switch to pencil. I can see that that's going to give me two numbers here, and it's having an interaction over here as well with the threes, and that would get me to an answer relatively quickly, but it's not very satisfying. So what I did was I switched notation actually, and I started to look at some different squares that I could see had very limited possibilities. And I'm just going to pause the video now and show you the squares that I think are quite helpful. Okay, so there we go. This is where I started to find a logical path, and I'm going to confess as well, this is not a very elegant solve today. So I really welcome anyone who has spotted something better than I'm about to show you. Be very interested to hear it. So you can see the approach I took was basically to label a whole load of cells that had very limited possibilities. There are a lot of 1s and 6s in the grid. You can see these sort of things here, and believe it or not, the first thing to note is you need to be able to eliminate this 1 here, and it's not that difficult to do, and it's a fairly standard technique that you get into the habit of doing when you get stuck, which is you take a square and you guess. So if you look at this square here, you can see if this square is a 1, that's going to eliminate this 1 here. Now, what happens if this square is a 6? Well, then if we look at column 8, there's only one place a 1 can now go in column 8, and that's going to be in this square here. But that immediately forces a chain of consequences. If this is a 1, you can see over here, where can we now place a 1 in this 3x3 box? Well, only in this square. And therefore, whether this is a 1 or a 6, this cannot be a 1 here. So we can eliminate that. And that then allows us to find something a bit more elegant to do with this square here and how this interacts. And what we're able to do, and what I'd advise you to do now, is to pause the video and think very hard about the options for this square. Because whatever we pick, it has sort of quite a profound implication for the other two squares in this 3x3 box, and also a variety of other squares that are affected by the choice here. And it's possible by picking judiciously to learn something about this square by considering what this square can be. So let's think about how that might work. So fairly obviously, if this square is a 1, this square will be a 6. But here, if this square is not a 1, let me just show you. If this square is not a 1, you can see immediately this box now, we've now got a 2-6 double in this box, which forces this to be a 1. So we know if this is not a 1, this square must be a 1. And look what happens as a result of that. This square now has to be a 6. Now where can we place a 1 in row 9? Well, only in this square. But this will be a 1. And again, this can never take a 1 as a result of that. So whether this is a 1 or not, this square cannot be a 1. If this is a 1, this 1 is eliminated immediately. If this is not a 1, it's eliminated indirectly. So either way round, this can't be a 1. So this is going to be a 6, which allows us to place a 6 there, and I think then you can place a 6 there if I remember rightly. and I don't actually think you can go much further than that. But the placement of the sixes, it does make a difference to solving the puzzle, because now if we take a look at columns 1 and columns 9, there's now very few cells in these columns that can take 6 anymore. Obviously we've got rid of the 6 here. This cell can contain a 6, and this cell can contain a 6. I'll just put it in just to illustrate. That's it. So there's 2 positions in column 1 that can take a 6. And let's go do the same exercise down here. You can see, so this could be a 6, and this could be a 6, and this could be a 6. Now, if we can eliminate the 6 from here, you can see that we would have an X-wing on 6s in columns 1 and 9. So we need to try and prove this can't be a 6. And actually, you know, that's, again, it's not too difficult to do that, because we have this sort of chaining that can happen around the grid. So you can see if this is a 6 here, obviously this can't be a 6. But if this is a 1, we can, this work can't be a 6 either. Why not? Well, let's go through it. If this is a 1, this will be a 6. This square here can only then be an 8. Now, if this is an 8, because of this, there's actually a 3-8 double. These 3 8s is double in row 7. So in fact, let me just absolutely demonstrate that to you. We have this 6, 7, 9 triple in row 7. So we know these 2 squares have to contain the other 2 numbers, so 3 or 8. So now once this square can't contain a 6, you can see because of this 6 here, the only square now that can contain a 6 is this one. Ergo, all of that just proves this isn't a 6. Now, that then matters because all of a sudden you do have now an X-wing on 6s in columns 1 and columns 9. And that now has an effect on this square here, because this square here can't now contain a 6. It can't contain a 9 either, because the reason for that is, let's look at where a 9 can go in column 1. A 9 can only go in one of these 2 squares. It's prevented from being in this square by this 9, prevented from being in here by this 9. So in fact, you end up being able to prove that this is a 7. And finally, after all that, so we can now remove this 7 here. This square here is a 1 or a 2. It's the only options left for it. And we get to this configuration. And the puzzle, believe it or not, is still not done at this point. It's still, you know, still requires a little bit of thinking. But here we're able to use a little trick. So those of you who've watched the videos before or are familiar with videos of Sudoku Guy, who's another YouTube channel that specialises in Sudoku, will know that there is such a thing called a Y-wing or an XY wing. Now, one trick to spot these is to think about them in terms of triples. So if we go back to this row here, if I just remove this square for us, oh, no, it's not going to let me. When we had this as being a 6, 7 or a 9, it was very easy for us to look along the row and say, okay, I can see that there is a triple. There is a 6, 9 here, a 6, 7, 9 here, and a 6, 7, 9 here. And it was the most natural thing in the world for us to spot that and then eliminate the 6, 7 and 9 from the other 2 squares. Now, in fact, when you're spotting Y-wings, it's just like a bent triple. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we have a look now at this square, and this square down here, if these were all in a line, we'd immediately say, ah, we have a triple. We have a triple on 1s, 2s and 6s. Well, this is just the basis for a Y-wing. So if you manage to spot what I call a bent triple, so this square, and this square, if they were in a line, it would be a triple. but two of them are in the same area, so we can think about them logically to an extent. And let's just analyze these three squares and see whether we can spot anything clever. Now you should immediately be able to see that if this square is a 1, this square here can't be a 1. But if this square is a 6, this square will be a 2, this will be a 1, this can't be a 1 again. So this arrangement, when you spot it, it will have, or it can very often have an effect on the squares around it. You should always be testing when you spot what I call a bent triple like this, whether they could be something sort of XY wing related. And there is here because it affects this square. We're able to eliminate 1 as a candidate here and place a 6. And finally, after all this work, we're now, I think, on the home straight to finishing the puzzle, because now we can, we can make several deductions as a result of that very, very quickly, like this. And we're finally starting to make good progress towards a solution. You can see now it has to be a 6, and we're starting to really get to a position where it's not too difficult to finish a puzzle. In fact, I'll leave that as an exercise for the viewer. So I don't know whether to apologise about this video today on the basis that I'd love to think there was a more elegant way of doing this in the way I eventually found. I really welcome comments if someone has found a cleverer way of doing it. I'm fully going to be accepting of the fact that there may be a cleverer way. But this way, well, there are some techniques here that we've covered before, but putting them all together and coming up with a solution to this puzzle, it wasn't easy. So well done if you did solve it. Well done if you spotted any of these techniques before I did. And we'll see you again next time on Cracking the Cryptic. Thanks for watching.